Hey, Ohio, welcome once again to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. I'm Spike Spangle. Tim, what's on your mind this week?
Got pension. Do you remember the commercials like got milk with question marks? I mean, it's hard to do this because I don't have the actual question marks once they got pension, but pensions. I mean, listen, we transitioned from the pension generation to the 401k generation, and that has left a lot of people without a pension. And think about what that meant. I mean, my grandfather had it easy. You go to work for 30 years, you get a gold watch, you sail off into the sunset, check shows up in your mailbox every month, and that's it. All you have to do is work at the same place, not get fired.
Yeah.
It was easy. And then we transitioned into this 401k generation that's left people basically saying, hey, wait a minute, I want the pension thing. Like that sounds good. So, we've got to figure that out.
And so on today's program, that's what we want to help you figure out. How do you create a reliable income plan that you can't outlive? Now, it's not about just taking some more market risk. It's not just about one tool that can produce income or not. It's usually a combination of many different ideas together, and that's where it really starts to become complicated because people have feelings or emotions about certain tools, even though we try to say, please keep your emotions out of them. Yeah. But there are things that we understand. There's market volatility, so there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. But is it possible to create a pension-like plan with our own savings?
It is, and listen, everybody's up against their own biases. There's certain things that make people feel one way. The same thing can make other people feel another way. And so we talk about things like pensions, which typically leads into the conversation of annuities, because an annuity is a form or a type of a pension. It's pension-like. Essentially, if you think about the essence of a pension, it's a defined benefit plan. I put X amount of money in, or my employer does, and then I get a specific dollar amount for the rest of my life. That is kind of the guts of a pension. An annuity can be set up in a very similar manner, where you put in a specific amount of money, you get a defined benefit or a specific amount of money for the rest of your life, for the rest of your spouse's life. So the good news is, if you were caught in that transition from pension world to 401k world, you can create a pension-like vehicle for your retirement. What does that do? What do I get from that? What you get is security, because now I've got my income piece figured out. I don't have my income that's floating around with market volatility, with the economy, with whatever Washington, D.C. decides to do. I know what's coming in every month between that and my Social Security, which allows me to start competing with inflation and getting that growth component in the portfolio.
And it does not have to be all of what is considered the life savings.
Well, we don't want it to be.
Yeah, not all. We want some liquidity. No. We want some growth. There are liquidity in pension-like tools like annuities, but setting that floor, and here's the thing, it's a lot easier to figure out some of these numbers because hopefully eventually you're going to have the mortgage paid off. Doesn't mean that you don't have housing costs anymore, because you're still going to have insurance. You're still going to have repairs. So,
and mulch.
But
mulch is the one that gets me.
Mulch will get you every time.
It gets me every spring. I look at the bill for those guys to put my mulch down. I'm like, is it really? I mean, it's shredded wood, and I know they dye it, but
I just always, whenever I see the mulch truck, I always like to run down the street and go, hey, no, you're at the wrong address, guys. It's 2 more houses down over here. But trying to set those costs up, we're talking about setting up a pension-like plan with a tool that covers those baselines. So this can be food, home costs, some of the health care, where exactly is our Medicare going to come out of? Oftentimes that comes out of the Social Security once we've turned it on, and that's understandable. But getting those baseline numbers. Some of the other growth, though, can be for things like vacations and lifestyle down the road, and that's stuff that's maybe outside of our set income plan, correct?
Well, it is, but honestly, I want to incorporate all of those costs into our income plan, or as we like to refer to it, our spending plan. Because listen, I don't like to leave lifestyle to chance. And when we start saying, all right, we're just going to have the baseline that covers, our immediate needs, that is going to then put, a trip or eating out or going to visit the grandkids on this maybe scale. And I don't want the maybe scale. I want all of it included. Let's figure out the income need. Let's put a plan in place that will create that income need, and then we can look at what's left over. And it's about giving jobs to the money.
Speaking of giving jobs to the money, you said it's easy for the folks who already will have a pension plan. But wait a second, aren't there some decisions that we should make, even if there is somebody out there with a pension plan of any kind? I mean, should we just turn the thing into the lifetime income? What about the possibility of managing it yourself?
Well, and that's a great question. There's a couple of things, as we look at pensions, they're not all created equal. And so some pensions have the ability to roll over a lump sum of money and you create your own pension on your own. And that's basically a math equation. Are they paying you more than what other people are willing to pay? But more importantly, how do we claim it? And this is the same confusion that we get with Social Security. It's like, when should I claim? With pensions, I'm also considering, should I have that spousal continuation? If something happens to me, is there going to be a need to replace that income from the spouse? Maybe it makes sense to do it with a pension. Maybe it makes sense to prepare another way. All of those are questions that can only be answered for an individual, and that's the reason why we ask people to come into the office, is because everybody's scenario is different.
I did get this from our producer in there who said, our phone lit up once in there because you said, well, people from 30 years ago, they had it easy. All they had to do was work someplace for 30 years and not get fired. Don't forget the work part and the getting up at 6 a.m. and taking, there was still that element to it.
I apologize.
You meant financially, they had it a little easier.
I'm not making light of your 30 years of work to get that.
My grandfather was a crane operator for 38 years, and I don't think he would like to say he had it easy.
He had it easy. All he had to do was go to work every day at 6 a.m. and for 30 years it was.
We're saying that you had a little bit easier because the financial planning element was going to be the pension plan.
Well, I didn't have to make any decisions. That's the big thing. When you look at today's retiree or somebody that's approaching retirement, if what you have is your 401k, you're responsible for everything. How much do I save? What do I invest in? When do I change it? How do I keep pace with inflation? What's the number I'm supposed to end up with? How much do I have to save on a monthly basis to get there? How much is my match? What is my limits? Oh, I turned 50. They said I could put more in. There's like all of these things that we're responsible for, and you don't know what you don't know. I mean, if you're watching this show right now and you're like, listen, I work on cars, I don't know about the financial stuff, or, I'm a doctor, I'm great with surgery, but I don't know how to plan for this retirement. You're in good hands. Nobody does. I mean, you can Google yourself to some really bad advice. What we're trying to do is make people aware. The sooner you get in, the sooner we start putting a plan together, the longer we have to fix any problem that you might encounter.
You are an expert in the field of what you do, but you're probably not an expert in retirement planning, investment management strategies, income spending plan. We're a budget-free zone here. We'd rather create a spending plan for you, taxes and so forth. So call, ask for some help. It's one of the greatest things you could do is raise your hand and go, I'd like a little bit of help with this. You can get started on your own retirement blueprint right now. Call the phone number on the bottom of the screen. There are folks standing by. They'll schedule an appointment for you. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Leave your wallet at home. Leave your purse at home. This is a conversation about how you would like help with a little bit of financial planning so you can be and stay retired. More with Tim Lofton when we get back right after this message.
The mistake that we see with a lot of people coming into our office is that they made a projection of how much money they were going to need maybe 20 years ago, and they didn't account for inflation in those figures. The average retiree is going to spend at least 20 years in retirement. That means that the cost of living is going to double at least one time. For example, if somebody 20 years ago said, I'm going to need $40,000 for my investments in retirement, that number is only worth $20,000 now. And so they actually needed to make sure they were looking for $80,000 if $40,000 net was their number back then. So as we're looking at the income needed in retirement, we have to have a plan in place that's going to double our income over that same period, or we're going to have to reduce our lifestyle, which is not what we worked all our lives for. Those are the types of things that we try and help clients with as they're planning out their future retirement to make sure that taxes and inflation are covered in those projections. If taxes and inflation are keeping you up at night, give us a call. Sit down, let us do a complimentary review with you and design your very own retirement blueprint. It's our trademark process that we've designed over the last 30 years to help you retire and stay retired. Did you know your retirement isn't entirely yours? That's right. Your 401k, IRA, or pension is actually shared with Uncle Sam. And when it's time to withdraw, he'll be waiting for his cut in the taxes. Want to know how much you will owe? Use our easy tax calculator to find out. You can scan the QR code or go to blueprinttaxbill.com.
Welcome back. This is the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. And today we're trying to help you create income that you can't outlive. Look, we relish that our grandparents used to have these amazing pension plans that would pay them for as long as they were alive. But today the saving has been on us. And as you were just pointing out, the selections have all been on us. We have to choose them. And then you have catch-up contributions in your 50s. And then what do you do with that account once you get to retire? Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? We said we're going to talk about how you create retirement income.
Right.
How about somebody who's come in recently, somebody who you've helped put this kind of thing together?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people sit and say, well, how does this work? Like, what is the process for figuring out my income? And so I'll give you a great example. We had a couple that came in, this is a couple months ago, and they basically came in and said, listen, we want to retire. We have no idea if we can retire. Here's what we have. What do you think? Now, this is a pretty common conversation in the office where we'll ask somebody, well, you know, do you already have a plan? I know you're working currently with another advisor. Do you have a plan? And what they do is they take their statements and they push them across the table to me, and they're like, well, there it is. And like, well, no, that's not a plan. Those are statements. That's a completely different thing. And so as we walk through the process for the client, and this client in particular, we looked at what their guaranteed income sources were. What's your Social Security that's coming in? What is your pension money that's coming in? And we took a look at that. They had a deficit, as most people do, of about $3,000 a month. So they needed an extra $3,000 from their retirement savings. Now, they were in a position where they had saved. They've done a great job. Between the two of them, they had about $1.5 million in IRA assets. And so as we were looking at this and saying, all right, I need $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. How much do I have to put into this, you know, retirement bucket, the actual income bucket? And as we worked with them, we took a look at it, and basically about $500,000 is what they needed. It would produce $40,000 a year before taxes, would net them out about $36,000. Problem solved. But here's the best part of it. We ended up with another $1 million for growth. So one of their concerns, and they were younger, I think they were 58, 59 years old.
Fantastic. And ready to retire?
And ready to retire. And they had a government job where they were actually able to get their pension right away. And so not the normal scenario. They didn't have to wait to 62 or 59 and a half even with their access. But the cool thing was we were looking at it, you know, my big concern for them, because of their age, is you're talking about a 40-year plus retirement. 40 years, that's 2 doubling cycles in inflation. And so that $3,000 a month need, as we sat there a couple of weeks ago, when we looked at it, you know, going forward in 20 years, that has to be $6,000 a month. 20 years from there, $12,000 a month. They were going from $3,000 a month to $12,000 a month just to stay even, Spike. That's why that extra growth part of the strategy, that extra million that they had left over, was so important, because you can see we had the puzzle pieces, but we had to put them together in a way that was going to allow them both the income they need today, but more importantly, the income they're going to need tomorrow.
Let's talk about the income tool itself, and I'll go ahead and say it. I'm alluding to an annuity here. Why is an organization, an insurance company, willing to take your lump sum of money, keep it for you, invest it, get some growth, and pay you a lifetime of income, even if you live to 105, 110, and they've paid you actually more than that initial lump sum ever was? Why in the world would they even agree to do that?
Why in the world would I be able to pay them a couple $1,000s a year, and if my house burns down, they'll build me a new one?
Because there's everybody else on the block paying into this thing too.
That is an excellent point. So there's $400 billion last year that went into annuities. Why? As we talked about at the beginning of the show, we've transitioned from the pension generation to the 401k generation, but the 401k generation still wants a pension. And so that is why we have seen such a large amount of money go into annuity products. The problem is annuities aren't created equal. In fact, people that recommend annuities aren't created equal. And so, you know, the problem is a lot of times is if you're working with somebody that maybe they just do insurance or they just do investments and don't do insurance, you're not getting the advice of the best of what's out there. You're getting the advice of the best of what that person has. Now, while that may tick the box for fiduciary rule, it's not the heart of the fiduciary rule. The heart of fiduciary rule is, and I mean, there's a company out there, and I'm not going to say their name, but they have a very big presence on social media, and they actually sell against annuities, and they say they do it because they're a fiduciary. Well, that's literally the opposite of the meaning of that. We're trying to find the best thing for each individual. And if you need guaranteed income, it is a great opportunity to look at, you know, some of those products out there and see if they're a fit.
And that's just a huge part of the conversation on its own. Is in this financial world, there are many different definitions of how people do things, and I think even for our viewers out there, it can be confusing. So you've got to kind of know the person who you're sitting down with, and it's not saying that that's a bad person. There's just different ways the industry works. There's the asset management part, there's the insurance part, there's possibly your CPA, and we can't even jump into being your own private business owner and you being the one who has to select a 401k for your employee. There's many different elements to it, but as an independent firm, just to explain to our viewers, we haven't done this in a while, Axum Planning and Wealth, you're independent of any of that, meaning what you can.
We don't have limitations to our toolbox. That's the easiest way to say it. I mean, if you're going to somebody and expecting the best of what's available, and what you end up with has the same name on the investment as the name on the building that you're going into, you may not be getting the best of what's out there. You may be getting the best of what they have. But as an independent firm, what we're looking for is unconstrained ability to solve problems. In other words, we have software if somebody needed an annuity, for an example, and we're looking at, you know, what is the most amount of income I can get from X amount of dollars, it'll actually give us a list. In that list, we can work with all those people. We're not held captive by just working with a select group or a preferred list, but the best of what's out there is what we're shooting for.
Folks, you can get started on your own retirement blueprint right now. You can call the phone number down on the bottom of the screen. We have people standing by. They'll schedule an appointment for you. We want to help you find the best tools possible. We want to work with the assets that you have to help you create a lifestyle that maybe you've never even dreamed of. And it starts right now with that phone call. Dial that number, get started on your own, no cost. Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. One of the things that can be complicated is trying to figure out your Social Security. Don't go anywhere. Tim put together this very special message on what you need to think about with your Social Security. We'll be right back.
Social Security is easy, right? The question is, should I take it now or later? Well, there are dozens of ways that you can take Social Security if you're single. and hundreds if you're married. You've paid into the system for decades. Don't you want to make sure that you optimize your retirement income? Depending on how you've set up your other retirement accounts, your Social Security could either be tax-free or up to 85% taxable. It's not as simple as it might seem. So give us a call today. Let us uncomplicate Social Security for your retirement. Give us a call at 855-684-3485, or you can scan the QR code below to schedule your complimentary review. You know, one of the things that we're seeing in the office today is people are coming in with statements that are down 15, 20, 30%, and they're still needing that same income withdrawal, which means the percentage they're taking out from their portfolio is now higher, which increases that risk of running out of money in retirement. This is where planning for volatility really comes into play, and it's the biggest shift that we're making for new people coming in our office, trying to help them recover what they've lost, but also make sure that they don't run into that same situation down the road. When you're looking at retirement planning versus pre-retirement planning, that's the difference. One is about accumulation. It's about growing your money over time. Once you get to retirement, it's about distribution, which is a different strategy. At our office, what we focus on is giving jobs to the money. It's making sure that the dollars that we need to produce income have that volatility removed. That allows us to take risk in other areas because we have our income figured out. If volatility has been an issue, if you're looking at your statement right now and it's down 15, 20, 30%, do you know how you're going to get back? Do you know what you're going to do in the future if that happens again? If you don't, sit down with us for a complimentary review. Let us design a retirement blueprint to help you retire and, more importantly, stay retired.
Welcome back. You're with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth, and this is the Retirement Blueprint Show. I am Spike Spangle. We're talking about how we try to create an income plan that you literally cannot outlive. And you just kind of kicked the door open to the insurance industry. And part of it is that if we're buying tools together, $400 billion alone flowed into annuities just last year. I mean, there's more and more and more that's been going in for the last couple of years. But it is kind of an insurance tool, and that we're sharing the risk. And we share the risk when we insure our automobiles. We insure the risk and share that with groups of people when we insure our homes. But you've said we also want to then insure our nest egg. How do we do that?
Well, listen, insurance is all about transferring risk. You know, we have whatever we have, whether it's a house or a car or a boat or our nest egg, and we don't want to lose it, and we can't afford to replace it. And so we transfer that risk to an insurance company. And it makes sense to us, you know, as obviously we don't drive around Ohio without insurance, or at least we're not supposed to. We get in a bit of trouble if you do that. We look at the value of our home, which is, interestingly enough, in Ohio, gone up a lot these last few years, which is weird because we're nowhere near the ocean. But yet we've still seen this escalate. And the idea of, you know, my house burning down and having to write a check to build a new one, like, that's crazy.
So, wipe out most families.
And I don't even question, you know, obviously none of us want to pay for insurance, but I want to pay for insurance more than I want to experience the risk of not. That's the key here. And so as we think about our nest egg, why is that any different? Why would we not want to transfer the risk of our income for the rest of our life to somebody else?
And part of the increase of these costs, you might say, well, I take my dollars out and I go and pay for groceries and whatever care I might need, and vacations and the family and so forth. But the insurance part of it is that there's a lot of things that are a lot more expensive, such as your long-term care.
Right.
So we're insuring that nest egg in a way of, I don't want to pay dollar for dollar for my long-term care cost in retirement. So how do we get it tool then that helps us pay for more of that?
Well, if you look at every study that's ever been done on wealthy individuals, one of the things, the common themes that come out of it is leverage. And, you know, a lot of times when we think of leverage, we think of debt. And we've talked about debt a lot on TV and radio, that there's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is that 3.25% loan that you have on your mortgage for 30 years when I can get a money market rate at 5%. That's good debt. Bad debt's credit cards, things of that nature. But as we think about how that fits into the cost for insuring our nest egg, it's really simple. You know, one of the products that we've seen, and this is a newer product that just came out on the long-term care market, is leveraged cash. I can put $100,000 in. It's immediately worth $300,000 that I could access for long-term care, tax-free for me or my spouse. I can use it from everything from home health all the way up to memory care. That is leverage. I've had $100,000 maybe in my savings account. It's not really working for me. I move it over here. It's not really working for me unless the unthinkable happens. I have to go into a nursing home and all of a sudden I'm on the hook for $100,000 a year. I've already got it saved. I'm using money that I don't necessarily need to give me that protection. I've transferred that risk to the insurance company. And here's the best part. If I don't use it, what happens? Well, that $100,000 passes on to my beneficiaries. I mean, we're going to see more and more of these types of products come out as our age of population gets closer and closer to a potential nursing home stay.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. I've also I've read about tools that also can work in a hybrid capacity in that you can have that long-term care, they often call it a doubler or tripler, or you could use it for income if you need that later on in life and you don't need the long-term care. Now, I'm assuming these are little features that you have to continually pay for as well, yes?
Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times, you know, as the industry has changed. I mean, 20 years ago when I was in this business, you know, you would get a long-term care insurance policy and they were great. You know, it was $4,000 or $5,000 a year, but you had kind of a Cadillac plan that protected you and your spouse. It was very easy. You knew what you were going to get. If you didn't use it, the money went away. But again, I was transferring risk. The problem is that doesn't exist anymore, or if you do want it, you're paying $15,000, $20,000 a year. It's completely out of reach for most people.
We've talked about at the beginning of the program, how do we set up an income plan for life that we can't outlive? There could be the possibility, I guess, of doing it totally with investment management. We would probably have to portion it out in different areas.
You could.
But a lot more risk to that.
A lot more risk. Well, I'm trying to take away the unknowns from retirement. That's my ultimate goal, is to know what's going to happen. And you can only do that with proper planning and making sure that you have money in the right jobs doing what they're supposed to do.
We appreciate you watching the program. Now let us do something for you. Call that phone number down on the bottom of the screen and you can get started on your own no-cost retirement blueprint from the entire team of Axum Planning and Wealth. Thank you so very much for watching. Tim and I will both be back again next week.